What's up everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the vlog, and this one I'm going to Las Vegas to play in my first ever World Series of Poker, something I've been daydreaming about for the past 15 years, and what better event to get my first experience than this year's Housewarming tournament, a $500 buy-in, $5 million guaranteed prize pool. I will be playing the fourth and last day one of this event, hoping to turn my $500 into a six-figure score over the course of 3 days. Without further ado, let's shuffle up and deal, and let's jump into the action. In this first hand, the blinds are 100, 200 with a 200 big blind ante. I look down at pocket sevens, and when action folds to me, I open to 600. The button calls, the big blind comes along, and we go three ways to the flop, which comes 5, 8, 6 with two diamonds. Big blind checks to me, and I think both a c-bet and a check are fine. This is not really a flop that's going to hit my range as the pre-flop aggressor. It is, however, a very good flop for the big blind, who could be setting up a check raise. Also, the player on the button has been involved in just about every hand and very reluctant to folding. With all that in mind, I decide to pot control and check. The button bets 1100, the big blind folds. Action is back on me. There's a good chance I have the best hand right now, and I also have outs to improve to a straight, so I make the call. The turn is a 4 of hearts. Boom! I make the straight. I check to the button once again, and this time they check back. The river is a bit weird. It's the 5 of diamonds, pairing the board and completing the front door flush. I'm not too concerned about a full house, as I would expect my opponent to continue betting on the turn with a set, since it's hard for me to have a random 7 here. I'm a little bit concerned about a flush, as my opponent's bet check line could definitely be a diamond draw. That being said, there's also a lot of hands I can get some thin value from here, like an 8, an overpair to the board, maybe a random 5. With all that in mind, I think a small bet is in order here, so I bet just over half pot and my opponent folds. In this next one, I pick up 7-8 suited in the small blind. There's a couple of calls from the under the gun and middle position players. I complete with a very playable hand, and the big blind checks their option. We go 4 ways to a flop of queen, 7, 8, all diamonds. Action checks around to the middle position player, who bets 1200, and I'm the only player to make the call. Heads up to the turn, which comes the 5 of hearts. Once again, going to exercise some pot control here and check to my opponent. They size up to 2200, and I'm not quite ready to give up just yet. This is the same opponent from the hand before, and I think they can be playing a queen or some kind of pair flush draw combo this way, so I make the call once again. The river is a 9, putting a 4-liner to a straight. I briefly consider putting out a blocker bet before checking for a third time, and this time my opponent checks back. I show my 2-pair, thinking it's good, but they show queen 7 of spades for a better 2-pair. I briefly thank the poker gods for not putting another 7 on the river, as I would have ended in a boat over boat scenario, and against this particular player, I think I could have very well lost my whole stack here. In this following hand, we're at the 200, 400, 400 level, and I open up the action to 1200 with 5-6 suited from middle position. I get called by the hijack, the cutoff, and the big blind. We go 4 ways to a flop of deuce, jack, deuce with 2 diamonds. This is the kind of flop that I love to c-bet small on, as it's very hard for my opponents to connect with it, plus I have the flush draw if I end up getting called. I lead out for 2200, just as I would with all of my overpairs and top pairs, and only the cutoff comes along. We go heads up to the turn, which comes the 3 of spades, which gives me a gut shot straight draw in addition to my flush draw. Because of this, and my relatively tight image at the table, I want to throw out another bet with the intention of getting my opponent to fold all their middle pairs under a jack, and even put some pressure if they are holding a jack. I decide to bet 7500, but that does not get the job done, and the cutoff makes the call. Heads up to the river, which is an interesting one. It's the 4 of diamonds giving me the flush. I was a little bit unsure how much to bet here, but I definitely went for the worst option of all and decided to overbet jam my entire stack. It's interesting going through the process of making these vlogs, because when I'm playing, sometimes I get caught in the heat of the moment, but then I get to watch the footage and analyze spots more thoroughly, and this one kind of hurt to watch. The reason for that being that by overbetting in this spot, I'm often going to get called by better, like a slow played full house with pocket jacks, a better flush, and I'm rarely going to get called by just a jack, which is my opponent's most likely holding at this point. I should have gone for a smaller sizing, maybe something like 15k or even smaller. Thankfully I did not get punished and my opponent folded, but definitely a lesson learned here. We are now at the 400, 800, 800 level. There's a limp from the very active player from under the gun. Action falls back to me in the small blind and I raise to 3,500. The small blind gets out of the way. Under the gun makes the call. I didn't catch my cards when I started filming, but I'm holding ace-10 offsuit. We go heads up to a flop of queen 6 queen with 2 clubs. As I mentioned before, I find that c-betting small on paired boards when you miss works more often than not, so I'm going to c-bet for 3,000. I could have gone for a bigger sizing with the flush draw on board, but I did not feel like bloating the pot against this particular player who ends up making the call. Turn comes the 3 of clubs, giving me a flush draw, and on this card I decide to pot control and check. My opponent bets 5k, which is a tiny bet, and even though I'm getting a good price to call, I'm not sure my 10 of clubs would be good enough if a club came on the river, so I decide to let this one go. In this hand, I look down at ace-jack offsuit in middle position. I open up the action to 2,100 and only the cutoff makes a call. Heads up to a flop of jack 5 ace with 2 hearts. Boom! I flop top 2. I c-bet for 3k and the cutoff calls. The turn comes a safe looking 4 of clubs and I think I would have set up a river shove here. I bet 9k and it looks like the cutoff player is more than happy to get all the chips in as they shove for close to 26k. Only thing I could be worried about here is a potential set of 5s, but obviously I'm not going anywhere. I make the call and they show ace queen. I'm in a great spot to get an almost full double up. The river is a brick deuce of clubs and I'm going to win a big pot here. Let's go. A few levels go by before I get involved in another interesting hand, and this one we're at the 1k, 1.5k, 1.5k level, and I look down at pocket kings in the cutoff. Even better, there's an open from the middle position player to 3,500. I go ahead and 3-bet to 12k. I can't believe my eyes when the very active player flat calls my 3-bet from the small blind, and when action comes back to the middle position player, they make the call as well. We got a big pot brewing as we go 3 ways to a flop of 5-7-7 rainbow. What a great board for me. I wasn't expecting this, but the small blind leads out for 16k and I love to see it. The middle position player folds and I'm going to just make the call here. Heads up to the turn, which comes the 3 of clubs, and now the small blind checks. Not really sure what to make of this line for my opponent. What would they lead into 2 players with on the flop, then check this turn? I'm not really sure, to be honest. It feels like they either have nothing or some kind of overpair to the board. As I said before, they hate folding, so I think there's a pretty good chance they might call with a hand like 9s or 10s. In any case, I have kings. I have a stack to pot ratio of less than 0.5, so there's not too much to think about here. I shove. My opponent goes into the tank for about a minute and a half before finally making the call, and they show pocket jacks. Let's fade a jack on the river. Once again, it's a brick deuce of clubs and I get a full double up. Literally the very next shuffle, which happens to be the last hand before we go on break, middle position player looks at his cards and open shoves for a little over 21k, just over 14 big blinds. I unfortunately did not film my cards, but don't worry, you're going to see them very soon. I'm thinking about how much to 3-bet here, so I'm looking at the stacks over to my left before finally 3-betting to 75k. The rest of the table folds, so we go heads up to a run out and I'm holding ace-king suited while my opponent has ace-queen offsuit. What a dream spot. Things take a dark turn though when I see him stand up from his chair, a classic pro move that instantly grants you plus 20% equity when all in and behind. Not only that, but I helplessly watch as he then grabs his backpack, and as soon as he does that, I know it's all over. The flop brings the inevitable queen and I don't improve on the turn or the river. Thankfully, it's a minor hit to my stack, but gotta give credit where credit's due. This guy straight up played me, and I can only respect that. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Nice hand, man. The tournament has been running for about 7 hours now. Players are busting left and right, and tables are getting broken. I get moved to a new table, and within my first orbit, this hand happens. We're at the 2k, 3k, 3k level, and an older gentleman opens up the action by making it 15k, a 5x raise. I just sat down at this table, so I don't have a read on this player, but generally, when an older person opens for 5x, they have a very narrow range of hands, usually consisted of aces, kings, maybe queens. It looks like they only have 18k or so behind. Now that I think about it, another indicator that they're super strong if they're opening for half their stack. I apologize for once again not filming my cards up to this point, but knowing my cards, I kind of laugh internally at the irony of the situation. I very briefly consider folding, but ultimately, I can't justify folding in this spot. I shove for their remaining stack and they make the call. I show my hand, pocket queens, and they show pocket nines. Wow, let's go. Let's hold. The flop comes. No! Oh wait, it's the 8 of diamonds. Jeez, dealer giving me a heart attack over here. The turn is a 3, river is a 5, and I add some much needed chips to my stack. In this following hand, we join after there's been some pre-flop action which went like this. There was a raise from under the gun to 6,500, the middle position player called, I made it 70k to go on the button, the small blind cold called my 3-bet, and the initial raiser called. We join the action at this point where the middle position player folds, and we go 3 ways to a flop, and we got a big pot brewing. The flop comes 6, 8, 10, all spades, which doesn't do much for me as I'm holding ace queen of hearts. Action checks around and we all see a turn which comes to 10 of diamonds, pairing the board. Once again, action checks to me, and with all these chips in the middle, I feel like I have to take a stab at it and try to take it down. I throw out a bet of 30k and I get almost immediately punished as the small blind clicks it back for 75k. Under the gun player folds and I don't really have any option but to fold. Kinda irritating to lose 40% of my stack here, but I only have myself to blame. I could have definitely saved myself an extra 10 big blinds by not betting the turn, but I guess sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit. I just wish I would have picked a better spot for that. Anyway, let's brush this one off and move on to the next hand. Another couple levels go by and I couldn't find a spot to recover from that semi-punt. We're now at the 3k, 6k, 6k level and I look down at pocket deuces. Not the prettiest hand in the deck, but with only 7 big blinds in my stack, they will have to do. I shove for 40k, hoping to get it through and pick up the blinds. The cutoff has different plans, however, and makes the call. For the first time in this tournament, I am all in and at risk with pocket deuces. Deuces never loses, right? Don't fail me now. Our opponent shows ace queen, so at least we're not crushed by an overpair. I'll take it. The flop comes 3 king 10 rainbow, giving my opponents extra outs to show me the door. The turn is an 8. Come on, let's fade the river. It's another 10 and boom! I double up and survive. Let's freaking go. At this next one, we're at the 4k, 8k, 8k level. I have 10 big blinds in my stack and the middle position player opens up the action to 26k. I look down at pocket jacks and once again, it's all in time. A 3-bet jam for 79k. As action falls back to the initial raiser, I'm just praying they don't snap call. They don't, which I love to see. But they do end up making the call with pocket 4s. Once again, I'm all in and at risk. Let's go to a run out. Can we fade the 2-outer? The flop comes 7 queen 5, so far so good. The turn is the 9 of hearts and the river is the jack of spades and boom! Another double up, another all in survived. Let's keep it going. I am surviving all ins, but the blinds are catching up to me. In this hand, we're at the 5k, 10k, 10k level and I look down at ace 10 offsuit. Action falls to me, and with 13 big blinds in my stack, I decide to open jam looking to pick up the blinds. That's what happens as everyone folds and I increase my stack by about 20%. Another level goes by, we're now at the 6k, 12k, 12k level and I pick up ace 9 offsuit in the low jack position. Action folds to me, I have about 11 big blinds in my stack, so in they go. Once again, everyone folds and I add some much needed chips to my stack. In this following hand, I look down at pocket 5s on the button. This is going to sound like deja vu, but action folds to me, 11 big blinds, all in, everyone folds, win some chips. I don't pick up any cards for the next hour or so. Meanwhile, short stacks have been busting left and right, and after about 11 hours of play, we're getting close to the money bubble. We started the day with almost 7,300 players buying in. There are 1,097 players left. 1,091 are getting paid, and we are now entering hand-for-hand play. I have about 6 big blinds in my stack. Can I survive the bubble?
There are 1,096 players left. We are paying 1,091. Players, we lost 2 players during that series of hands. We are still on the bubble. We're still on the bubble. Players, we lost 5 players during that hand. Congratulations.
Let's freaking go! I cash in my very first Wsop tournament. The Vegas trip is off to a great start. With the pressure of cashing off my shoulders, I'm going to be looking for any opportunity to chip up and try to find a bag for day 2. In this hand, we're at the 10k, 20k, 20k level. I'm in the under the gun position and I look down at ace 7 offsuit. Just under 5 big blinds in my stack. In they go. Looks like nobody has much of a hand as I get it through and increase my stack by over 50%. Let's go. In this hand, I pick up Jack 10 suited on the button. There's an open to 60k from the low jack player, and unless they're holding an overpair, Jack 10 suited will be in pretty decent shape against most of their holdings. With that in mind, I decide to go for it and 3-bet shove for a little bit more. Action falls back to the low jack, and as expected, they make the call. For the third time in this tournament, we are all in and at risk. Can we survive again? My opponent shows ace-4 suited, so I'm almost in a flip situation here. I couldn't ask for better. Let's go to a runout. Unfortunately for me, there's an ace on the flop, but a queen as well, so I actually pick up a gut shot straight draw. The turn is a jack, nice. I pick up some extra outs. I need a king, jack, or 10 for the win. The river is a brick, deuce of clubs, and this concludes my first ever WSOP tournament. I ended up min cashing for $800 and finishing in the top 13% of a field of over 20,000 players. I can't complain. I had an amazing experience and loved every second of it. My trip in Vegas doesn't end here though. Join me in the next episode where I'll be playing the 600 Deep Stack tournament for another shot at a 6-figure score and a WSOP bracelet. Catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching and good luck at the tables.